Okay, so I think it's fair to say the semiconductor industry is now aware of its environmental responsibilities. And I'm just wondering off the back of Semicon West, was sustainability, was that a big topic of conversation as far as you're aware, or whether it was your people coming onto the stand and asking you about it, or just generally on on the exhibition floor in the conference?
Yeah, well, for me, individually and representing our company, it was one of the most prominent topics that I was involved with for the week. I did a lot of had quite a bit of interaction with industry analysts, media outlets, and things like that. And in all those cases, I would say sustainability, all those discussions, sustainability was a part of it in one way or another, and to a large extent for sure.
And do you get the impression clearly the industry is aware of sustainability as a as an issue? Do you think it knows sort of the progress that it has made to date, and perhaps more importantly, where it needs to be? Or do you think there are still quite a few folks that are still just vaguely aware of it, but haven't really sort of understood what's required and by when?
I would say that the level, it all starts with awareness. I have the same outlook as you do. I would say the level of awareness is noticeably increased in our industry over, say, the past few years. Say since the pandemic, which obviously was front and center in everyone's minds at the time, created a lot of challenges for our industry for sure. But yeah, let's say the last couple of years, I've seen the whole topic of sustainability becoming a much more prominent topic in our industry and in our interaction. I do think we're still more at I think it seems like we're at the late stage of the awareness stage, and now we're starting to figure out, now we're more of a learning stage, right? What needs to happen? How can we make that happen? That type of thing. I think it's kind of interesting. So I spend a lot of time at Semicon talking with, we do a lot of work in compound semiconductors, silicon carbide, gallium nitride, which have a lot to do with, more efficient use of resources. So, whether they're, sustainable sources or not, it's just the more efficient use of, valuable resources. And so there was quite a bit of discussion about that. But in my mind, Phil, it's kind of interesting because it seems like there's also sort of a crossover, because at the same time, we want to talk about our industry being aware of sustainability issues and opportunities and things like that. There's also this whole massive wave building now for AI, artificial intelligence, and we had a lot of those. That was a big topic of discussion at Semicon also, and a lot of that focuses around the fact that how much power, electrical power, is that this wave will consume, and how are we going to meet that demand? So at the one hand, we're talking about how we can be more efficient as an industry and reducing our footprint and improving our sustainability. At the same time, now you've got this, orders of magnitude increase in the amount of power that's going to need to be generated, because it's going to be consumed by these massive data centers. And so, you want to lower the footprint at the one hand, at the same time, you're seeing this huge demand in resources on the other. So it is an interesting dynamic that all these things are happening at the same time. Obviously, sustainability has been on everybody's radar for a lot longer time than has AI and the data centers and the power generation and consumption that all entails. But it is interesting how these things are combining the way they are currently.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, do you think that the sort of the sustainability agenda is compatible? I was going to call it the digital agenda, but as you've outlined, obviously AI is the sort of latest and biggest iteration of that. Do you think at some point one or other will have to slightly give, and so we maybe won't get quite to net zero by when we want to, but we've made a good effort to get there and reduced a lot of the power consumption? Or will we at some stage potentially just have to say enough digital consumption, people can only have X amount of devices or whatever, whatever the rules are? Or do you think there's a way forward that the two things don't need to be mutually exclusive, shall we say?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't think I'm smart enough to know the answer. None of us are at this point. But if you look at it on the one hand, yeah, we want to reduce our footprint, we want to improve our sustainability. At the same time, you've got things like AI coming along, which now it increases the demand for those same resources that we're trying to, utilize more efficiently. But the flip side of that is if you look at things like compound semiconductors, as an example, now we can make the generation, the transportation, the conversion of the energy much more efficient. So that's conducive to what we're trying to accomplish. And at the same time, now, if you do that, you enable these data centers to operate more efficiently, which accelerates the use of AI. I mean, if the predictions for what AI's capabilities will be in the future are at all true, that in turn will obviously should then generate new ideas, new technologies, new ways of doing things that could then further improve the effort to improve sustainability. So, there's a lot of variables there in the mix, but I think a lot of the things that we're doing already are moving us in general in the right direction while these new trends, come along during the process and evolve as they will. As far as how to best predict the outcome or the pace of progress, I think that's a much bigger question than a lot of us can answer. But you can see how these things could either overall sort of interfere with one another and sort of increase the challenges, or they could sort of dovetail with one another and actually drive, significant improvement at a faster pace. I think both of those are reasonable scenarios that, as far as what we can see today.
But as you've outlined that the focus the industry has on improving the energy efficiency of whether it's the chips themselves and then what the devices they then go into, which go out into the big wide world. Do you think that's a sort of healthy starting place in terms of minimizing the power consumption throughout the sort of life cycle of the products? Is that the right approach, you think?
I believe so, absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of these things that we're doing that are getting more attention and emphasis and investment in our industry are all things that should very well enable us to accomplish these goals that if we weren't doing those things might otherwise be sort of, self-contradictory. So yeah, I think the things we're doing are all moving in the right direction. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges. Again, you got AI, power consumption introducing, but could also help develop new solutions that we can't foresee today. Another sort of contradictory challenge is with all the geopolitical tension going on around the world. It used to be that the semiconductor capacity around the world was all, market driven, right? It's the most efficient use of capital and resources to meet the world demand for semiconductor component manufacturing. But now with everything going on in the world and the value that governments and that societies are placing on semiconductor technology, now you're actually building in redundancy around the world, right? You have all these major economies that now realize, as a result of all the supply chain challenges that were pretty much associated with the pandemic, that now you have to have your own domestic semiconductor industry, essentially. And so now it's not being based on market-driven efficiencies. Now it's based on sort of government and economic, security, if you will, economic security, military security. So that's another sort of contradictory challenge, is we want to reduce our footprint at the same time that there's this new demands, new growth drivers for the industry overall around the world that will likely exacerbate that challenge and not help to alleviate it.
Yeah, although I guess with that, if it's sort of reshoring or nearshoring, at least the supply chains potentially shrink, which again, to add to your observation that it's a very complicated situation. I guess that's a good thing. If all the manufacturing potentially takes place within the United States, we don't have to ship things from the other side of the world. That's environmentally a good thing. But yeah, it's just another consideration amongst many, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we're here in the Phoenix, Arizona area, which is sort of becoming the new Silicon Desert, if you will. I mean, there's so much semiconductor manufacturing capacity and support infrastructure being put in place here that I kind of have a front row seat to seeing all this happens, and you see constantly seeing announcements because we have all the TSMC fabs being built here, we have additional Intel fabs being built here. The scale of all the support infrastructure that these huge fabs generate in terms of supply chain, chemical suppliers, material suppliers, labor, sources for labor, trained labor, that type of thing. Now you're talking about the nearshoring of all this stuff around the world. I mean, again, you just having a front row seat to this, you see how much, not just what the investment is in terms of resources for the fabs themselves, but the support infrastructure, supply chains infrastructure that has to happen around that. It's the scale is it's pretty amazing. So yeah, it could be opportunities, but it's certainly going to be challenges as well.
And in terms of your own organization, what sort of approach are you taking? Because I guess there are new materials you can use, different processes you can save, maybe depending obviously on what it is you do, but as manufacturers you can reduce chemicals, use different chemicals. What sort of things are you looking at internally to sort of improve your own sort of carbon footprint, I guess, when it comes to design, manufacture, etc.?
Yeah, great question. I mean, one of the things that I think that we do well that helps move things in the right direction is, we're not a mega scale OEM. We're sort of a small, much smaller scale, so we're much more agile and nimble, more cost efficient, and part of what that does is besides allowing us to grow our business effectively and support evolving customers' needs effectively, is it also shortens the time, the development time and cost to bring new products to market. And so as an example, if you look, so we have our new state-of-the-art, 200 millimeter CMP tool, which competes with more or less legacy 200 millimeter CMP tools from large, very well established OEMs. But because we can do this in much shorter cycles and much more cost efficiently, we can bring a new product to the market in say 5 years, where it would take maybe 2 or 3 times as long for a larger organization to do that, just because of scale and inertia. So I have some numbers here. If you look at a new product compared to like a legacy product in the industry, our tools have twice the throughput of competing tools. We have 45% smaller clean room space footprint. We have 60% less electrical energy consumption, 80% less water consumption. So if the industry really puts a priority in things like as we are and will continue to do, in sustainability and whatnot, then part of it is I think we need to recognize the need that technology advances so fast, and learning about sustainability should continue to accelerate in pace, that taking that information, the new technology advancements as we have done, and bring those into new products at a faster cadence than what has historically been the case in our industry, I think can go a long way toward achieving these goals in a way that can still be from a financial standpoint, can still be accretive and beneficial, and not necessarily a negative have a negative effect on those considerations.
And you also do offer refurbished and re-engineered, I think, technology solutions. So I guess that, well, it sounds very environmentally friendly to repurpose existing. So your the carbon footprint you're repurposing as opposed to building new. So I guess there's a balance. You've outlined why the new stuff makes complete sense environmentally, but I guess repurposing existing machinery as well does have a role to play when it comes to sustainability as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. The work we do, we started out as an equipment company that was focused in the secondary market before we evolved into a new equipment OEM, say over the past 5 years. But you're absolutely right. So I can give you some tangible examples of that. Like, we've had customers that have bought what were then the leading edge, say 200 millimeter CMP tools, because they needed the technology that was embedded in those products, or the process performance that they were capable of providing. But these were tools that were really designed primarily for high volume manufacturing. So they actually have a much larger footprint, if you will, because if you're using it in high volume manufacturing, one, they're less efficient than current technology would enable. But when they were more current, they were leading edge in terms of process capability, but they also had a much larger footprint, higher cost of ownership. which is suitable for a high volume manufacturing organization. But if you're doing more of a pilot production or startup company or a research type of operation or something like that, that big cost of ownership, it comes as a, it's a high price to pay for a lot of those types of situations and business models. And so now you can take a legacy CMP tool that was not scaled to that low degree for high volume manufacturing, and you can upgrade that with these types of technologies that are so important, that are what drove the penetration of these markets into the industry. So we could take things like endpoint detection that did not exist on legacy CMP tools, and we could put that on these smaller footprint, lower cost of ownership platforms. So now you get the leading edge capability of these high volume manufacturing tools, but you get that at a much lower cost of ownership, much smaller environmental footprint. So we've done a lot of those things, which actually, again, is good for business, but it's also good for these other objectives as well. And it's a very good solution in a lot of cases. But to circle back to your point, Phil, to what you just said, it's definitely a balance. You have to consider what these tools were designed for, what they're good at, where the costs come into play, as the trade-offs between cost and performance. So it's a complicated formula, but I think we've done a good job of developing pretty optimal solutions for all these different scenarios.
And I'm also thinking there's obviously the solutions themselves, manufacturing, installing, etc. But the ongoing sort of support and maintenance also has some role to play, making sure that machines are running, continue to run efficiently, therefore, not over consuming resources, etc. Just, I suppose, your thoughts as to how important that is, and does the industry realize that, or does some people still take a bit of a mentality once those sort of machines fitted, they kind of leave it run as long as there's no problems, then they're not too curious about what's going on?
Yeah, it's definitely a broad mix. Although, again, just in terms of overall mindset, you can definitely see this sort of tidal shift that people are more and more aware and thoughtful about things like how much water are we consuming? Is there a way we can cut that back? We've had customers come back to us and ask us if we can, change the design or change some software settings or develop other solutions like being able to filter and recycle water that basically would be going down the drain when the tool is in idle mode, that type of thing. So it's an ongoing thing, but yeah, we definitely, it's for us and our customers, we see that we're constantly trying to improve things to address these issues, and it's definitely has much more mind share than it has in the past.
And in terms of the overall supply chain, I mean, scopes 1 to 3 for the greenhouse gases leases are fairly well understood, I think, the sort of set of parameters. And do you, when it comes to supply chain, do you engage sort of upstream, downstream, and sort of ask a few questions of suppliers, etc., or again, is it early days where everyone's kind of working out their own sort of internal situation before they start, pushing back or inquiring of other folks in their supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, for us, in terms of our company individually, yeah, I would say we are much more in the early stages of that. I mean, we're much more, thoughtful about it and whatnot, but we have some interaction, some communication with our suppliers on these considerations, but it's definitely early stages for us. I think we're still in that front of mind type of evolution going on in our industry overall. But that's happening, internally, sort of organically internally with our suppliers as well, because I know we have these conversations with them, and that they'll bring that topic up as often as we will. So they're doing their own things already, which we are somewhat aware of, but we're not at the stage yet where I would say we are really requiring our customers or scrutinizing, their operations and management decisions to really understand to a certain degree how to what extent and how they are implementing these measures and taking these steps internally. There are things that I'm very mindful of, which is if you look at things like how parts are fabricated. So if you look at how metal parts are made or plastic parts are made, a lot of that is what I would now call subtractive manufacturing. You're taking raw chunks of material and whittling away at those and manipulating that material into what it needs to be for the final part. Whereas now you look at all these additive manufacturing techniques, generically, you could refer to that like 3D printing, where you can efficiently take a spool of material, a filament, and basically fabricate in a very environmentally sustainable way the final net shape part that you need with basically zero material waste or a negligible amount of waste at best. So these are things that are pretty significant. I don't know that they're necessarily front of mind for a lot of folks like it is for us, but these are the kind of things that we take advantage of wherever we can, and part of that is keeping these sustainability opportunities in mind.
And I'm just wondering, more generally, we've talked about the sort of compatibility or not of sustainability versus digital, but when it comes to sustainability in the future, do you think the industry can evolve, if you like, sustainably, or will there come a time when sort of the rule book needs to be thrown out and more sort of radical? I mean, you mentioned obviously, I've talked to various folks about it. Arizona is a fairly dry place, so potentially water is an issue, etc. I mean, will people have to start thinking fundamentally, even where is the best place to locate a semiconductor sort of ecosystem, or do you think what's currently going on can be tweaked, if you like, to become sustainable? Or just your thoughts of sort of evolution or revolution, I suppose.
Yeah, I think if I was to bet on that outcome, I would say it's going to be much more evolutionary than revolutionary. Everything we do, we're always on the very bleeding edge of technology and what can be conceived and manufactured and put to use. Again, we're always moving as fast as we can. And this, you've got technology challenges, financial challenges, all this type of thing. So I don't think if you do anything revolutionary, I think it'd be very difficult because the pace of progress in our industry and the challenges, the scale of the investment that's required, it's capital intensive industry. So to do anything revolutionary, I think would be very challenging, and therefore, in my mind, it's much less likely that'll be the course. Whereas we do know what we can do in an evolutionary manner while we still juggle all these other challenges and opportunities that go hand in hand with the ones we're talking about here. So, yeah, I think it's likely to be much more evolutionary. I think we can get there from here. Again, with all the things we've already talked about here today, I think it's within reach.
Okay, I mean, we talked obviously pretty much exclusively sustainability, and maybe just as we finish, be good to understand sort of other issues or what's on your roadmap, whether it's technology solutions or other sort of, as I say, challenges that you're looking at, or even opportunities. Just anything you can share as to what else is keeping you busy as a company.
Well, the short answer is plenty. One of the things that we are investing heavily in right now that I'm actually involved with quite a bit individually is looking at ways with these new applications. We're very focused, like I said earlier, compound semiconductor, which is a lot of opportunities and challenges there. It's one of them is, like say, particularly for silicon carbide, the slurries are, they're expensive. They're not environmentally friendly. That's something, if we could reduce those costs, we can drive down the cost of silicon carbide material and devices and increase adoption, which helps the environment, right? Say make electric vehicles more affordable, get more efficient in energy generation conversion, like we talked about. So one of the things we're investing heavily right now is being able to increase the utilization of that slurry more than what is the current state, which is it's a single pass through the tool, comes in, flows onto the polish pad, and then goes right down the drain. So we see good opportunities. We've done some testing where we can basically reutilize some percent amount of that slurry. The amount is something we'll determine empirically here in the very near future, but that's something, as an example, of something we're investing heavily in right now, which we really believe is going to really help improve, both reduce the cost of ownership, accelerate the adoption, and improve the sustainability of those types of processes. Other than that, I talked earlier about the maybe faster cycles of new product development and introduction into the market. I think we are a well-sized company to enable that, so that opens up a lot of other opportunities in terms of different products we can bring to the market, besides being as CMP focused as we are right now. and also looking at other opportunities in the marketplace where, for example, would be scaling our platform to 300 millimeter, things like that, where we can now bring these efficiencies from these faster development cycles. We can now bring these efficiencies into the industry at a larger scale than we are today.
Okay, it's been great to chat and have your thoughts on sustainability, obviously the main part, but also some of the innovations going on at the company. So really appreciate your time as ever, Dan. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Phil. Thanks a lot for allowing me to share our story and have a conversation today. I really appreciate you joining.
Thanks again.